Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera. Hi everyone. So let's continue our lesson today with the chapter 6, variation. Alright, okay, variation. Alright, so let's go to the learning standards that you have to cover for today. So today we are going to learn 12.1 types and factors of variation. Okay, the learning standards, you are able to describe the meaning of variation. Number 2, justify the necessity of variation for the survival of a species. And then number 3, describe the types of the variation, which are continuous variation and discontinuous variation. And last one, compare and contrast continuous and discontinuous variation. Okay, so let's go to the meaning of the variation. So what is the meaning of the variation? So in biology, variation refers to the differences in characteristics found within the same population of species. Right? So I repeat, variation refers to the differences in characteristics found within the same population of species. It refers to the physical characteristics observed in phenotype differences caused by changes in structure, physiology, and also biochemistry. Alright, so examples of the variation in humans are height, height, weight, blood group, tongue rolling, eye color, and also sex or gender of the human. Alright, so these are referred to the meaning of the variation. So what is a variation? Variation refers to the differences in characteristics found within the same population of species. Alright. So let's go to the necessity of variation for the survival of species. So why variation is important, right? So one of the important is for the survival of the species. Okay, variation plays an important role in evolution and forms the basis of natural selection. So what is a natural selection? Natural selection is an evolutionary force that selects beneficial genes and remove the non-beneficial ones from the natural environment. So through natural selection, species that possess phenotypes which enable them to adapt to their surrounding will continue to live and breed for the survival of the species. So that means that here the variation is important for the survival of the species. Okay, by how? By natural selection, whereby the species that possess phenotype, which enable them, to adapt to their surrounding, will continue to live and breed. Right? Okay, so that is important for the survival of the species. Okay, look at the bioexploration here. The Industrial Revolution in the United Kingdom caused environmental pollution. So Biston betullaria, which is darker in color, survives better compared to the one in bright colors. Okay, because it is not easily seen by birds or prey. Okay, let's take a look on the diagram here. Okay, as we can see from the diagram here, there is the two characteristics of the Biston betullaria. So there is a group of the Biston betullaria with a white color or light color, light color, and another one group with a darker color, darker color. So the darker color can live better or survive better, in the environment. Okay, because the darker color is not easily seen by the prey, right? Okay. So during the Industrial Revolution in the UK, so the darker color of the Biston betullaria can live better or survive better than the bright color. Okay, what is the reason? Because the darker color of the Biston betullaria is not easily be seen by the predator. So this this species, this the darker color species will live better or will survive better. So this is important for the survival of the Biston betullaria. Okay, now let's go to the necessity of variation. Right, okay, first, enables natural environment to continue selecting beneficial characteristics and remove the non-suitable ones. Right? So enable natural environment to continue selecting beneficial characteristics and remove the non-suitable one. And then number two, ensure the survival of the species when the environment changes. Yeah, same like the best Biston betullaria just now. All right. Okay, then number three allows cross-breeding among species. Cross-breeding among species to form new species. Okay, that is referred to the necessity of variation. So there are two types of the variation. Okay, what are they? Continuous variation and second one, discontinuous variation. Okay, let's go to the first type of the variation, which is continuous variation. So what is a continuous variation? It is the variation in which the differences in a character are not distinct. Are not distinct or distinction means that the difference in the character is not clearly observed. It's not obvious, right? So individuals show gradual differences in characteristics from one extreme to other extreme. Yeah, so the individual just show a little bit differences, in the characteristics. Right? So means the difference in the characters are not obvious or are not distinct. Okay, example of the continuous variations are heights, ketinggian, weight, berat, body mass, jisim badan, and also skin color. Alright, so if data is obtained and plot on a graph, okay, later we will look at the graph, right? A normal distribution or a bell-shaped curve is will be obtained. Yeah, okay, a bell-shaped curve of graph will be obtained, right? So, or we can say normal distribution. So, most members of the population have intermediate phenotypes. Intermediate phenotypes. Okay, what is a phenotypes? Refer to the observable characters or physical appearance. So in the continuous variation, most of the members in the population have intermediate phenotypes between the two extremes. Okay, later we will look at the graph. Okay, usually quantitative. Okay, quantitative. The character can be measured. And the character can be measured. And the characteristics are influenced by environmental factors. Okay, that is referred to the continuous variation. Okay, refer to the variation in which the differences in the character are not distinct or are not clearly observed or not obvious. Right? So you have to remember the example of the continuous variation, which are height, weight, body mass, which is measurable or can be measured. Right? Okay, so this is referred to the graph of the continuous variation. So the graph show normal distribution. Yeah, normal distribution, a bell-shaped curve. Yeah, a bell-shaped curve. Okay, we can see here a bell-shaped curve of the graph, right? So we can see from the graph here, most of the individuals in the population have intermediate characteristics or intermediate phenotypes. Okay, so this is referred to the graph of the height of the individuals of the population. So this is referred to the height, right? Okay, height graph, yeah, of the continuous variation. So another example of the continuous variation is body weight and skin color. Okay, now let's go to the second types of the variation, which is discontinuous variation. Yeah, discontinuous variation. So the discontinuous variation shows distinct differences in characteristic. Distinct differences in the characteristic. Sorry. So it means that in the continuous variation, it will show the difference in the characteristics which is obvious or distinct. If data is obtained and plot on a graph, a discrete distribution of a bar chart with separate bars are obtained. There are no intermediate characteristics, and there are no intermediate characteristics. So the characteristic is qualitative, cannot be measured because the characteristics can only be determined by genetic factor. So the characteristic is not influenced by environmental factors. Yeah, it's not like the continuous variation. If continuous variation, it will affected by environmental factors. Okay, but for the discontinuous variation, since it is qualitative, it cannot be measured, and the characteristics is only shown by the genetic factor. So a characteristic is determined by a single gene with 2 or 3 alleles. Yeah, okay, so a characteristic is determined by a single gene. Therefore, the characteristic is easily seen. Okay, examples of the discontinuous variations are blood group, fingerprint pattern, tongue rolling, earlobe, yeah, types of the earlobe, okay, thumbs, hyperextension. So these are examples of the continuous variation. As you can see from the diagram here. This is referred to the continuous variation. Okay, what can we see from the picture here? We can see the difference, the difference of the type of the iris. Type of the iris here. So this is referred to the discontinuous variation. Alright. So the graph shown is referred to the discontinuous variation. Okay, it is a qualitative variation. We can see the difference in the characteristics is distinct or obvious. Okay, which are there is only 2 bars here, 2 separate bars here that refer to the characteristic which is ability to roll the tongue. Yeah, okay. Some of the individuals or the students are able to roll the tongue, and some of them are unable to roll the tongue. Okay, that is referred to the discontinuous variation. Refer to the differences in the characteristic which is distinct or obvious. Right, so these are examples of the discontinuous variation. We do speak, there are who have a widow speak and also non-widow speak. Alright, okay, we can see here. And then the types of the earlobe, there are individual which have a free earlobe here, free earlobe, and right, another type is attached earlobe. And then refer to the tongue rolling. Okay, this is referred to the people who are able to roll the tongue, and this is referred to the people which is unable to roll the tongue. Okay, let's go to the comparison between continuous variation and discontinuous variation. Okay, please look at in your textbook. Maybe it is a bit more clear than this one. Okay, we go to the similarity between the continuous variation and discontinuous variation. So what is the similarity? Both show differences in characteristics among individuals of the same species. Both show differences in the characteristics among individuals of the same species. Okay, must be in the same species, right? Variation occur in the same species. Okay, let's go to the differences of the continuous and discontinuous variation. So for the continuous variation, there are no obvious differences in characteristics. No obvious differences in the characteristic. For the discontinuous, there is a obvious and distinct differences in the characteristics. And then the second difference, which is presence of intermediate characteristics. Yeah, presence of intermediate characteristics. For the discontinuous, no intermediate characteristics. Right, then number 3, a graph with normal distribution in the continuous variation. Yeah, graph with normal distribution. Yeah, we show the bell-shaped graph. Yeah, the bell-shaped curve of the graph. Okay, but for the discontinuous variation, the graph with discrete bars. Yeah, with discrete bars, or the graph with separate bars. Okay, and then for the continuous variation, the characteristic is controlled by many genes. Yeah, characteristics is controlled by many genes. And for the discontinuous, characteristic is controlled by one or single gene. Yeah, one single gene. And then number 5, continuous variation influenced by environmental factors, while the discontinuous variation not influenced by environmental factors. And last one, continuous variation can be measured, which is quantitative, and discontinuous cannot be measured. Alright, so this is referred to the comparison between continuous variation and discontinuous variation. Okay, so I think that's all for 11.1, yeah, types of the variation. Alright, so I hope you can understand, and please do a short review, or please do the concept map between the continuous variation and also discontinuous variation. Make sure you can compare between these two types of the variation, and also please remember the examples of the continuous variation and examples for the discontinuous variation. Okay, that's all for today, girls. Thank you, everyone. Take care of yourself.